My name is Victoria Whitley. I'll be your host today for our panel on applying to college. Before we get started with today's panelists, welcome everybody. My name is Victoria Whitley. I'll be your host today for our panel on applying to college. Before we get started with today's panelists, okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Before we get started today, I just wanted to say a few words about our program. Girls Talk Math is a free math and media camp for female and gender non-conforming high school age students. Doctors Francesca Bernardi and Katrina Morgan started the camp in 2016 at UNC, where they were graduate students. I helped at that camp when I was an undergraduate, and then after I moved to the University of Maryland for graduate school, I became a coordinator for their sister camp that was started by Sarah Burnett. This year, we had a special online version of our program with 4 organizing groups from the University of North Carolina, Maryland, Minnesota, and California, LA. We had about 60 campers who worked on fun math topics like knot theory and patterns and fractals. Our camp finished up this past Thursday, so this is our last Saturday event of the summer. If you're interested in next year's programs, keep an eye on our website, girlstalkmath.com, for our 2021 application next year. Okay, so we can get started now. So we have 3 experts from 3 major universities who are going to speak with us today, and I'll have them introduce themselves briefly, and then we will move on to short presentations they have prepared, and finally some questions. So Carla, could you start us off?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. So my name is Carla Salas, Assistant Director with the Office of Undergraduate Admissions at UNC Chapel Hill. Also did my undergrad at UNC Chapel Hill. I'm so excited to be here and to share more about the university and the college application process as a whole.
Taylor?
Hi, my name is Taylor Duvall. I'm the Coordinator of Merit Scholarships and Special Programs in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions at University of Maryland. I am also a graduate of the University of Maryland and really excited to talk to you today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Deanna Loggins, and I am the Coordinator of African and African American Recruitment at the University of Minnesota. I'm also an admissions counselor and in the undergraduate admissions office. So I can't wait to answer any questions you all may have today.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move on to the presentation where I will share these slides. And we will get started with Minnesota.
Okay. Hello, everyone again. So today I will be talking to you all about what are the things that you should be looking for when you're applying to a university and how you can do that, especially with everything that's going on with COVID-19. I know it makes things a lot harder and it's a different experience. And so we just want to make sure that you were able to do the best, able to make the best decisions for yourself with all of circumstances that are going on. So when looking for the right college for you, there are a lot of things that you need to take into consideration. You may not find everything you may want out of one university, but trying to find one that has the things that are most important or a majority of the things that are important to you, and then doing your best to make the rest of those things happen is very important, especially with a lot of schooling possibly being online for the foreseeable future. You want to make sure that you're able to still have those connections and things that are important to the college experience. So the things that I tell students to look for are the type of programs that you're interested in. You want to make sure that the school that you go to has the program that you want to go to school for. And if they have programs that go along with them or internships or research opportunities, that's also something great to look at as well. Also take in consideration like the tuition. While you don't want that to be the one thing that stops you, you also want to take that into account because you don't want to completely go into debt, or looking at scholarships the school may offer or scholarships you can find yourself. I think that class size is very important to look into because everyone doesn't do well in the classroom with hundreds of students in them. And sometimes if you just ask, you'll find out that sometimes even the larger schools, like the ones that we're speaking to you about today, they do have smaller class sizes, but just checking to make sure so that you are comfortable and able to succeed. That's the most important thing. Also looking into like campus culture, things that you would be interested in, whether it's a math club or if it's a cultural club, any of those things, or maybe even a language club. That a lot of schools have that, or sometimes even like Harry Potter, just something that can help you find your place and connect to other than school. Also, just looking to see if you're interested in sports or you're interested in classes, how they're going to do them because they may be online. That's something that you should look into as well. So here, provided I have some tips to looking into that, definitely just go on the website, or Google is your best friend. Type in the name of the school that you're interested in and what you're looking for. Sometimes it's literally as simple as that. I tell students all the time, if you want to go see virtual tours, type in UMN virtual tours, UMN math program, things like that. It can be as simple as that. I will also say, if you do have problems finding those things, don't hesitate to call the admissions office or call someone at the school. They can connect you to someone who could help you walk through the site or any questions you may have about a program, and to point you in the right direction of someone else who may be able to help you if we can't. If you're interested in organizations and things like that, try to find their social media so you can see what they're actually doing, and to see, oh, this is something I would be interested in. This is a group that I can fit in, or they have my same interests. And also, just don't be afraid to ask a friend or family member or anyone else from maybe even the Girls Talk Math program, if they know someone at a university that you're interested in. Hey, can I get your opinion, your experiences? I can't go to the school right now. I just want to hear and talk to someone who has gone through the experiences at this university. Like, never be afraid to speak up and advocate for yourself, because at the end of the day, that's where you're going, and you have to do what's right for you so you can succeed. Okay.
Thank you. So next we have UNC.
Great, thank you. So I'm here to talk about, the key parts of the college application as well as tip for essays. So key parts of the college application, predominantly, there's the application itself. And so the bulk of your application will be filled out, and there's a couple of different services that different schools may use when it comes to the application itself. So the Common App and the Coalition application are two services that I can think of that schools will opt into, where you're filling out the bulk of your application once and sending that off to the schools that are using either of these platforms. But there may be a couple different ones depending on the school that you're applying to. And by and large, I think generally these are some of the key parts of the application, but it's going to differ slightly from school to school. Some schools may be requiring other things, but generally these are some of the main things that schools are looking for. So in addition to the application itself, most schools are also going to ask for your high school transcript, which will be sent out by a counselor. They're going to want to look at your grades, how well you're doing, but also the classes that you're taking. GPA may play a factor for some schools in your transcript. Test scores has an asterisk next to it because generally schools have always required test scores, either the ACT or the SAT. This year is a little bit different with the cancellation of so many testing services. Schools have changed their policies when it comes to testing, either for 1 year or for the future. So definitely make sure to reach out to the schools that you're applying to. If you're applying this year, if you're applying in the future, make sure what their requirements are for the test and how that's differed from the past, given the circumstances regarding COVID-19. There'll be a place in your application where you can fill out a list of your extracurricular activities, write out the things that you're involved with. Typically what schools are looking for in this is they want to know what you're doing outside of the classroom. I would think generally schools are looking for quality over quantity. So they want to see that you're engaging in things that you're interested in beyond just trying to check off every single box that you can think of based on your school. But definitely make sure that you're involved outside of the classroom and that you tell schools the things that you're doing, because it can potentially show your interest and make you stand out in that way. Letters of recommendation, which are sent by teachers, or counselors or community members. The requirement of how many letters of rec you're going to need is going to vary from school to school, but typically letters of rec are used as supplemental information to get a better sense of who you are from someone else's perspective. And then the essays, and again, the number of essays that you're going to have to write for the college is going to depend on the school, but generally you're going to have to write at least one essay. And what makes a good essay is by and large individuality. So tips for how to write an effective essay is think of this as an interview. So some schools may offer the opportunity to do an interview, but some schools may not have the resources or the capacity to give interviews for all of their applicants. So they use the essay to get a better sense of their applicants. So make sure you put as much of yourself into the essay as possible. Take this opportunity to write about things that you weren't able to highlight in other parts of your application. Really just show your individuality and your uniqueness, and go from there. A couple other things is to think small. So instead of trying to capture a large picture, everything fit in all 17 years of your life into one essay, think small, write about something specific that you're interested in to really highlight your personality in that way. So those are some tips to get started. And then use the essay to show us your interests, to show us your personality, your individuality. We like to say that if you're funny, the essay is a good highlight your humor, but if you're not, maybe that's not the time to test it out. But really just use the essay to lend your voice into yourself, to show a little bit more about yourself. And that takes us, to the last kind of tip there, is to be authentic. Don't be afraid to show as much of yourself into your essay, to let colleges and universities know more about yourself, to highlight an interest that maybe you're particularly interested about, highlight other parts of yourself, as I said earlier, that you couldn't fit in other parts of your application. Really, essays are where you have the most room to make an impact, because some of these other things have already been set or dictated for you, right? Your transcript and your grades up until this point, you've done all you can to get those up to this point, but the essays where you have the room to kind of maneuver and show more about yourself and make yourself stand out beyond some of the numbers that are going to make a part of the other parts of your application.
Thank you. And finally, we have Maryland.
Okay, so now that we've talked about the application portion, this next part is going to be more so about scholarships and financial aid. So if I can say one thing about scholarships and financial aid, it's actually going to be two things. A, do the FAFSA, do the FAFSA, do the FAFSA. I am not one to normally use so many exclamation points, but as you can see on my slide, I used a ton right next to FAFSA because it's so crucial to fill it out. Even if you think that you're not going to qualify for the FAFSA, please fill it out. You never know. Also, please do your research on your individual schools that you're looking for. Some schools, their merit scholarships are tied to their admission application, but some schools require specific applications. So it's really important to do your research and make sure that you know what the individual schools that you're applying to require and if there are any additional scholarships. Also, don't be afraid to ask questions. Some schools review for merit scholarships on a need blind basis, meaning that your financial need isn't going to play a part in your review for merit scholarships, where others will take need into consideration. In addition to the admissions office scholarships, keep in mind there are other scholarships you can look into. So sometimes the individual departments at a college also have scholarships. It depends on the individual department. Some reserve them for students who are returning to campus, so once you've established yourself in a major or a program, whereas some do offer them to both freshmen and returning students. Also, look for private scholarships. I cannot tell you how many times students say, well, it's only a $500 scholarship. But that's your books for the semester. That's $500 that's not coming out of your pocket. And you'd be surprised at the places that you can look for scholarships. I have listed a few here on the slide for you, things like Big Future, FastWeb, collegescholarships.com, College Board also has a scholarship search tool, but also look in your local community. So For example, community service organizations, sometimes they have a smaller scholarship for graduating seniors, things like that. Make sure you're inquiring. Ask your parents' places of employment. Sometimes they offer scholarships to employers' children, things like that. So definitely make sure in terms of scholarships that you're doing your research, looking around. Little scholarships add up and cut down on your total cost of attendance. Also, financial aid. I've already said, make sure you're filling out the FAFSA. Financial aid is anything that's going to help you pay for college. So that does include loans. Keep that in mind. I hear a lot of students when they contact us after they get their financial aid package saying, I only got loans. Where is my financial aid? Loans are a type of financial aid as they are assisting you in paying for college, and there are both subsidized and unsubsidized loans. Also, understand the terms and the different types of financial aid. So the FAFSA website actually has a kind of dictionary in terms of financial aid terms. Definitely take advantage of that so you can understand what your financial aid package is telling you. And then total cost of attendance is a huge factor. I also have under scholarships, don't go scholarship blind. You need to make sure you're comparing apples to apples. So keep in mind, every school is different. One school may be offering you a large scholarship, but even when you subtract that scholarship from what it's going to cost for you to actually attend that school, it's still going to be more expensive than a school that maybe offered you a lower amount. But you have to make sure you're comparing that total cost of attendance to make sure that you're seeing the real number it's going to cost for your education. Also, fee waivers. As you're applying to colleges, these application fees do add up. So definitely take advantage of application fee waivers if you do have the option to. Different schools offer different types of fee waivers. Some schools offer fee waivers if your parent is an alumni. Some schools offer fee waivers if you go on a tour. Some schools only offer fee waivers for financial need or things like that. So definitely, it never hurts to inquire about a fee waiver. That $75, $50 application fee can add up if you're applying to multiple schools. So definitely take advantage of that. Sometimes the application fees also mean that in the future, your confirmation fee, if you're admitted, is deferred into your tuition. That can also be helpful for students as well. Overall, I'd say the biggest thing about scholarships and financial aid, understand every school is different and their qualifications for merit scholarships are going to be different. Also, do everything you can in order to do additional work, because even if you get a large scholarship from a school, all those tiny ones add up and cut down on your total cost of attendance.
Thank you. Okay, well, that was the end of our presentation. Remember, campers and volunteers, that if you want to ask more questions, there's a Q&A feature in the webinar. And if you're on the YouTube Live, you can also ask questions through that, and we will try to get to them. So we talked some about the application. And I think a big question for a lot of people right now is how testing is impacted by COVID-19, as well as just how testing has become maybe less important recently in the last couple years in general. The campers want to know how important is the SAT or the ACT or AP scores in the decision. How are they required? Will you even look at an application if the scores are bad? Things like that. So let's maybe start with Taylor.
So in the past and next year, as we mentioned, it's going to be a little different in regards to COVID and testing not being available this year for this year's incoming seniors. This year, the University of Maryland, for the year, for our fall 2020 application for the class of fall 2021, we are going test optional. So that means if a student does not have testing available, we're not going to penalize them for that. And if they do have scores available but don't want to submit them, they do have the option to not submit them as well. In regards to the past, we have required test scores. However, we use a holistic review process, taking into account 26 factors. So some students, we understand, they're just not the best test takers. Some students get extreme test anxiety, things like that. So I'd say while a test score is a factor that our office would consider, it's never a make or break factor. In regards to AP scores, we actually don't require AP scores to be sent in regards to the admissions review. Students would only send their AP scores if they wish to earn college credit with us.
Carla, if you could.
Yeah. So at UNC, actually very similar to Taylor when she described over at the University of Maryland, testing in the past traditionally has always been just one factor of many that we're considering as part of our holistic review. So there is no cutoff. There isn't a test score that is going to automatically disqualify you. We'll literally read everything that comes our way, and it's a real life human being that's reading everything. Essentially cover to cover when it comes to your application to get through everything. But testing has always been just one factor of many that we're looking for. And it's not meant to make or break an application. It's supposed to indicate how well you can do on the college level, but as Taylor said, for some students, that's just not true, just for a variety of reasons. So that's why that's not the one thing that we're focusing on. Instead, we're looking at that in addition to everything else that we're looking at the application. Also, similar to University of Maryland, this year, because of the cancellations with COVID-19, the university system that governs all 17 public institutions in the state of North Carolina has allowed us to provide a one-year waiver for testing, so they won't be required for students that are applying for the fall of 2021. If students have taken the test and want to send us the scores, they're more than welcome to. We'll encourage them to do that, but they won't be negatively impacted by leaving a score out or anything like that. Just because we do understand that circumstances beyond their control may have kept them from taking a test or doing well on the test if they did have a chance to take it, just because of everything that's been going on. So that's where we are with testing right now. Next year that might change, that might not, just depending on how things progress. So definitely reach back out if you're not applying this year and go from there. And then also AP tests or SAT subject tests have been optional for the application process. So if you have them and you want to send them in, you can, but if you don't, that's perfectly fine. However, if you do want to receive credit for them, we will need them by the time you enroll.
And Deanna.
Yes, so the University of Minnesota is doing very similarly as you all schools. The only big difference I think that students should know is that when we're doing our application this year, when it comes to the testing, we will ask the students at the beginning, do you want to turn in a test score? And if you say yes, then you have to. You can't go back and switch. So if you are going to turn one in, you have to turn it in. And if you're not, you're not. That's the main difference for us that I think students should know, just to be sure. So if you're not sure yet, don't necessarily start it just yet until you're sure that you don't want to take the test or not. But we also do the holistic review. So we will be looking at things other than the test scores. We look at the types of classes that you've taken, the extracurricular activities, things that may have been going on in your life, any things you may have been involved in. So all of those things come into account, and the same with you all. We'll be looking at AP scores and IB and stuff like that, but we do understand that a lot of people haven't been able to take the test. So while we will see okay, you took that course, and we'll take that into consideration when we're looking at the colleges that you're interested in and the majors and things like that, we won't hold it against you if you don't have test scores, because obviously most people didn't take them. But if you do want credit for them, we'll most likely need the test scores. But obviously that we'll have to see how things progress as it gets closer to next year. So
yeah, it's a very strange time we're in.
Yes.
Since we aren't looking as much at test scores, the campers are very interested in what in an application really makes someone stand out. If it's not going to be that 2,400 or whatever it is these days, what really will make someone stand out? Let's start with Carla.
Yeah, so I think it'd be some of those other factors that you put into the application. And so for me personally, I think one of the parts that I find the most enjoying is the essay, because I feel like that's where I get to learn the most about a student, just really find their interests and find out more about them. I think transcripts will also be a key indicator, because they'll show that you're challenging yourselves and things like that by taking some rigorous courses, and then letters of rec and things like that will also stand out. But the essays, I think, like I said earlier, is it's the part that you can control from this point moving forward. It's the part that you can really put as much into yourself and can show your individuality. So I think putting as much thought and attention into an essay, I think, is what can help you stand out beyond everything else that's going to be a part of your application.
Deanna?
So I think with us, what really makes like a student stand out is, are you a well-rounded student who will be able to succeed? College is very expensive. It is an investment. It is a taxing experience. There's a lot of work that you have to do. So if you, like, we want to know you'll be able to succeed. No one wants to just have students come in just because, and now they, wasted their money. They can't stay in school. We don't want those things to happen. So we want to make sure that you're a well-rounded student. So while test scores may not be there, we'll see, oh, if you have good grades, or you're explaining this happened to me and this is why my grades may be this way, or I've been involved in this program and that's why I'm so inspired to be in this field and things like that. We want to know what is driving you, and do you have the tools to succeed? And if you don't, maybe we can find those resources for you to ensure that you succeed. But if we don't know what makes you who you are and how you plan to get to the finish line, because that's the point, we want to graduate, then that's where I think that's where a lot of the hesitation comes from. But showing that you definitely are well-rounded and prepared is what's most important to us.
And Taylor?
I'd say my answer is very similar to my colleagues. They actually did a really great job of explaining that, yes, we're looking at that transcript and that essay is huge. Like Carla said, it's your chance to basically interview with the school that doesn't offer an interview. But in addition to what they said, I'd say one of the best things you can do to advocate for yourself is effort in your application. So don't phone in any part of your application. Don't try and do it the night before it's due. Don't stress yourself out like that. I know none of you watching this would ever do that, but I always have to say it. So make sure you're really putting that effort in. We have short answer questions in addition to an essay on our application. And I adore the short answer questions just because they're only the length of a tweet or so. So it'll be, what was your favorite thing about last Tuesday? And that not only gives, a little glimpse into the student's life and what they're interested in, but it also shows the student's personality. So don't think, oh, well, I turned in my transcript, I wrote an essay, I'm good, I'm done. Everything with your application is being looked at. So remember that when you're completing your application.
Yeah, I would definitely reiterate what everyone's been saying, that every part of your application is important. And I think we've mentioned it, but, have other people look at your applications too. Like when I applied to college, I remember I had my family look at it, and guidance counselors and teachers and, whoever was on the street, tell me how it was. So it's very important to get that second set of eyes, or third or fourth. And it's definitely more than just numbers involved. Let's see. What are some, kind of going off of that, but I guess what are some common mistakes that students make in this process that, we've kind of touched on some, I'm sure, but maybe just expanding on that. And let's start with Deanna.
One thing that I would say that really stood out for me with the applications this year is that students literally waited to the last day. I can't stress that enough. Please don't wait to the last day. And also too, there are different time zones. Know your time zones. Just don't do it around 10 p.m. Just don't hit don't do it, because it becomes a whole nother thing. And sometimes we can go through the applications and still, but it becomes an extra hassle. And what if you do something wrong in the application, or you leave something out? We don't have time to go, hey, you didn't turn this part in. We need you to do this so we can review your application. Now it's, now you're on a space availability and things like that. And we don't want that to happen. So there are a lot of other little nuances here and there. But for me and our office, that was definitely the biggest thing. Oh my God, can we please get this student in? How can we do this and this and that? So just please don't wait till the last day. Please don't wait till 10 p.m. because it may already be 12 there, 11:59, whatever. So please try to turn them in early. Oh, and have someone check for errors and typos and things like that. You don't want those little things to be distractions.
Taylor?
So to echo Deanna, also keep in mind, admission staff, we're people, we do go home, there is processing time. So while things are often sent electronically, electronically. Sometimes it can take a few days for something to show up on your checklist or show up as received. And if you turn things in at the last minute, you're going to be freaking out right before that deadline, and you don't need that stress. Also, like everyone has been saying, those second or third set of eyes are huge, especially in your essay. I cannot stress that enough. Your couch influencing your life is very different from your coach influencing your life. So make sure that it's not just spell check. I always tell students my little trick when I was writing papers in undergrad was to actually send it through Google Voice so it would read it to me. So that way if something came out sounding weird, I'd know and be able to highlight it.
It's a great tip. Carla?
Yeah, so echoing what both Deanna and Taylor just said, taking your time with the application or not taking your time with the application would be a common mistake, I think. Not only waiting until the last minute to submit, but also rushing through it and maybe submitting it before it's fully ready, and then you realize after you hit submit that you forgot something, and then you have to scramble. And I think most admissions offices are going to work with you on a case-by-case basis, but it's added stress on both ends, and it's never going to negatively impact you. But that's not something that you want to put yourself through, just not being sure whether or not, this additional thing that you want to send or whether or not your application is ready. You don't want to have that kind of idea at going into it. So I think just taking your time with the application, making sure you started early so that you have time to review it a couple times, making sure you're answering all the questions truthfully, because some schools will go back and check, on the back end if you're admitted, and that could potentially, cause a problem. Don't lie in your application, things like that. So taking or accidental lies, even if that is, something that you didn't mean, it is still something that could potentially add additional stress. But yeah, taking your time with the application, making sure you're answering everything fully, and yeah, having other people look over it, whether it's teachers, counselors, what have you, someone that you trust that can give you an honest opinion on it, I think would be good.
Yeah, these are all very important things to think about. And then I think that something that's very new to high schoolers especially, that they've never really experienced before, is getting those recommendations. And I know that we kind of talked about this a little bit, but what is there specific teachers they should ask, or will a subject matter make a difference, if it's a math teacher versus your music teacher, things like that. Let's just go back to Carla.
Yeah, so at Carolina, we require one letter of recommendation from a core subject teacher. So it has to be someone that's taught the student either math, science, social studies, English, or a world language. So that's the one requirement. Students are able to send more if they have other folks that want to write a letter of recommendation, whether it is, an elective teacher or a community member, a coach, or an advisor, or something along those lines. But beyond that, as long as it comes from a core subject teacher, there really doesn't make a difference to us, whether it's, a math teacher because they say they want to major in math or anything like that, or anything like that. So I think the general tip that we tell students when it comes to asking for letters of recommendation is to ask a teacher that knows you well. That can write a letter of recommendation on your behalf that's going to be specific to you, because those are generally the letters of recommendation that stand out. The teachers that can show, the effort that you put into their class, or maybe it's a class that you struggled in and then found a way to persevere, and maybe it's not the highest grade on your transcript, but the teacher can tell us, how hard you worked to get to that grade. Those are just some examples. It really can be anything, but the general point is that the teacher should know you well enough to write highly about you. Yeah.
Taylor, do you have?
So with us, we do require 2 letters of recommendation. One should come from your guidance counselor, and one is from a teacher, but it's your choice which teacher. We will accept additional letters of recommendations if students want to submit them. And similar, it's any teacher you would like to. However, the one time it can be beneficial to have a certain subject matter is if you're interested in one of our, what we call our limited enrollment programs. So for example, if a student's really interested in engineering, sometimes during that secondary review, since we do review major blind, when we're reviewing again for that major placement, then that can come in handy for the engineering review committee to see, hey, they had a really good relationship with this teacher because, they taught them bio during sophomore year and then they taught them chem during junior year, things like that. And then they were, in robotics club and they were their advisor for that club. So again, make sure it's someone who you have a relationship with. I always say don't have it be someone who hasn't seen you in 2-3 years, because yeah, you may have really loved your 9th grade English teacher, but do they know you as well now that you're a senior, or do they remember you as a 9th grader?
Deanna.
So we don't require the recommendations, but if you do send them, I would definitely say, just like what Taylor and Carla said, have it be someone you know, someone you trust. This is an obvious, but I feel like it should be said, don't go to that teacher who you didn't pay attention, or you're always late to class, or you've fallen asleep. Like, go to a teacher you know that you made a great example of yourself and what you're capable of doing, and that they would speak well and highly of you. You don't want to go to someone who may not speak as highly about you. So definitely a teacher that you trust and feel that you made that connection with. So it doesn't necessarily have to be from like a specific core teacher or anything. I would definitely say, who do you think knows you the best and will speak to who you are?
Yeah, those are all, yeah. I would definitely say if you're in, 9th or 10th grade, and you're like, why do I have to think about college now? This is the kind of thing that you can think about is, what kind of teacher do I want to make a relationship with? How are my teachers viewing me? If you're going to cut up in class all the way until senior year when you need your application, they still remember you the previous 3 years. They haven't forgotten. So definitely take that into consideration.
One more thing, if I can add about letters of recommendation, it's similar to what we said with your application, that you should take your time. Give your teachers plenty of time to write one. Don't ask them the day before the application is due. Allow them time to go in and write you a good letter of recommendation, and allow them the time to review it and things like that. Because they could have every intention to write you a great letter of recommendation, but if they don't have the time to, then they can't.
Also, to add on to that, keep in mind also, some schools will have deadlines. I know the local high schools in my area in Maryland, some of them do request that you give a teacher 2 to 3 weeks prior to a deadline to write the letter of recommendation, because most of the time it's not just you who's asking for a letter of recommendation, it's the entire senior class has those few select teachers that they all absolutely adore and want to write that letter of recommendation.
Yeah, especially if one of the requirements is a guidance counselor, then they are probably writing one for everyone in your class. And if your class has 20, people in it, or 1,000, that can be a lot. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. I think there's some confusion or just, not knowing among our campers what majoring and like this double majoring and minoring, and some schools have separate colleges you have to apply to, and often applications ask for, what your major is going to be. So I think they just want to know a little bit more about that. So let's start with Deanna.
Okay, so when it comes to majors and minors and things like that, the first thing is at the University of Minnesota, we're not like smaller schools or other Big Ten schools. When you apply to the school, you're automatically admitted into a college. So within the university. So we have 8 different colleges to choose from. A lot of Big Tens will usually have you stay for 2 years and then you apply to get in for your junior and senior year. But we start you automatically your freshman year. So we will ask you on the application what majors and like within what colleges are you interested in. And we'll look at your grades and your explanation of why you want to be in that college or in that program. And we will see which program we think best fits you and that you'll succeed in. So yeah, that's how we do that part. And if you want to like double major, that's possible, but I would definitely say start that freshman year, first week with with your advisor. Hey, this is my goal. This is what I want to do. I want to succeed and finish this in 4 years. So what do I need to do? And then your advisor should be able to help you figure out, okay, you can get a credit for both for this class and things like that. And the same with the minors, setting up that plan from the beginning so you can like take advantage of your time. So yeah, definitely, if you're interested in University of Minnesota, look at the colleges and what majors are available, because we have some that are similar majors in different colleges, but they may have different focuses or different paths on getting to that same goal.
As a follow-up, Deanna, can you change your major once you're in college, or you change your school, change the college within the university, or are you kind of in that track?
Yeah. So you can change, but you have to apply. And once you're in, it's on a space availability. So someone would essentially have to leave for you to come in. And you will also have to, we'll be looking at your grades from that first year, second year, however long you're in that program, and things like that. If it's with the same major, well, a different major within the same college, it's a lot easier. But if you're trying to completely go to, like, let's say you're in the College of Liberal Arts, and now you want to go to our Carlson School of Management, our business school, that's like a completely full process where if you're saying, oh, I'm English and I want to do theater, that's within the same school. So it's not impossible, but you do have to essentially go through the entire process again to be reviewed.
Thank you. Taylor.
So similar, we're also a Big Ten school that you will come in and have a major. I have mentioned our limited enrollment program. So at the University of Maryland, we have 12 different colleges within the university, but then we also have what we call our College of Letters and Sciences, which is our undecided students or maybe students who weren't directly admitted into that limited enrollment program. And so that's a great option if a student's just unsure of what they want to major in. I always tell students, I didn't know what I wanted to major in at 18. I had a lot of different interests. Keep in mind that you will take a general education kind of course load, regardless of what major you're in, since we all do want well-rounded students. And so you'll be able to kind of explore your interest in that way. We do allow students to double major across departments, which would mean you can have, dual degrees and things like that. You can also minor, which would be anywhere from it'd be a lower amount of credits. Normally a lot of them are around 20. And then you would also have an additional focus. Sometimes students want to major and minor across colleges or things like that. The minor gives you that option where maybe you don't have the room in your schedule to actually do a double major, but you have a great interest in this other field. Maybe, it's management, maybe it's something like psychology or things like that. And you also want to take courses in that, but don't have enough for the full degree.
And Carla?
Yeah, so at Carolina, we don't admit based off of a major, and the majority of our majors, and so all of our students start off in the College of Arts and Sciences, and then the majority of our students, finish and stay in the College of Arts and Sciences, because that is what houses the majority of our majors. There are a handful of professional schools that will require a separate application that students can start or move into beginning in their sophomore year at Carolina, but everyone will start in that College of Arts and Sciences, start with the general education curriculum, and then if you're interested in one of the professional schools, you can definitely indicate that in your application, because that'll make sure that you get paired up with an academic advisor. That'll make sure you're meeting all the prereqs in your first year to apply after you complete that. But beyond that, students that are interested in any of the majors that are in our College of Arts and Sciences can just declare that as early as their first year, but by the middle of their sophomore year is when they are required to declare a major. And then beyond that, depending on the major, you do have the flexibility of changing it. Once you get into your senior year, if you want to do something drastically different, it may be a little bit difficult because we do have a pretty strict 4-year graduation requirement where we do try to get our students out in 4 years. So just depending on how many credits you fulfill to our specific major, it may become more difficult the further you get into it, but you do have the flexibility, especially early on, to change your major and move beyond that. And you have the ability to do up to 2 majors and 1 minor, or 1 major and 2 minors. Just with everything else, and then go from there. And they can be across a variety of different disciplines as long as you can fit that into all of the requirements that you need towards graduation.
Also, just to add on one more thing, since you did ask us about changing majors, yeah, sometimes you can, change your major and things like that. However, keep in mind that may add on additional time for your undergraduate degree. So definitely don't just kind of a lot of students do end up changing their major at least once during their undergraduate career, so it's not bad to change your major or anything like that, but definitely keep in mind that if you're going from, you know, history to engineering or something vastly different, it may add on time to your undergraduate degree.
Yeah. I have one thing. I don't know if anyone that's listening is interested in our nursing program, but with our nursing program, we allow transfers, but if you transfer into the program, you have to go to Rochester's campus within Minnesota. So it's something to definitely think about if you're interested in our nursing program. Try your best to apply on time. The deadline is also earlier. It's November 1st. But if you just decide to transfer into our nursing program after your freshman year, you would have to then move to Rochester and go to class there. So definitely something to think about if you're interested and not sure.
I would definitely say that if you are miserable, please don't stick with your major and be failing all your classes because you hate it, because this is what you're going to be doing, you know. But I would also say that more so now than I think maybe when your parents are going to college or even your siblings, that you are not going to be stuck. Your major is not going to define the rest of your life. You know, maybe you go do math and then you do more math, but you might also, you know, go into some completely different field where they just happen to need someone with your background. So don't feel like you're trapped in any way throughout your college experience, at least in my opinion. Yeah, okay. Let's move on more towards university life. I think these questions might depend on if you're thinking in a COVID environment or not, but maybe just address both scenarios. But I think there's some interest in dorms and if they're mandatory, or maybe other aspects of that first year of college and maybe what they should be expecting from your respective universities or, you know, universities in general. And let's start with Carla.
Yeah, so first years are required to live on campus at Carolina. You know, this year we're making some exceptions, you know, from students that, you know, have chosen to do fully remote as an opportunity, but generally first years have that live on requirement on campus. And then from there, you know, the idea behind that is that it'll allow students to kind of integrate themselves into the community, to find their space, to have the ability to do everything and find everything within Carolina. But as far as what there is to do around campus, generally speaking, you know, there's always something to do. We have over 800 clubs and organizations that vary across, you know, a variety of interests. Some are very serious. If you're interested in like a pre-professional path, you can find other like-minded individuals. But we also have a Quidditch team, you know, that gets together and does that, you know, on the regular, which is a lot more relaxed. So there's plenty of ways to get involved, to find things to do outside of the classroom. I would say, you know, our students learn as much from the things that they're doing outside of their classroom as they are from their professors, and they kind of use that to balance their lives and move about that way and to just find their community. Athletics are typically huge at Carolina. You know, have pretty successful athletic programs kind of across the board, and you can always find students there cheering on Tar Heels. But our performing arts programs are also very popular. We have a couple theaters on campus that are generally either free or incredibly discounted for students to take part of if that's what you're interested in. You know, you can go watch a performance or watch a dance group or something along those lines. There's always something to do at Carolina generally. This year, you know, we're taking it kind of day by day. We're trying to figure out what's happening. A lot of our opportunities for first years for finding ways to get involved have moved to a virtual setting, and different campus partners are finding a way to navigate that so students can still find that sense of community at Carolina, especially coming into their first year, you know, in a virtual and safe environment, given that we can't, you know, join in large groups like we normally would have. So we're working through that, you know, in the best way possible. It is posing some difficulties, but we're, you know, I think across the board, we're trying to do the best we can to make sure everyone's safe, but still finding their place at Carolina.
Deanna?
So the University of Minnesota has over 900 clubs and organizations that you can be a part of. And we also, the reason why we have so many is that we are very open and encouraging of students wanting to start their own club. Before, COVID happened, I was encouraging students, someone start a TikTok club, someone start an influencer club, okay? Like, let's get this going. As long as you have 3 people or more that are interested and dedicated into doing all the things that the steps to lead up to starting a club, you can do that. So we have things from sororities and fraternities. We have organizations based on your major or interests you may have. And we also just have like fun clubs too, like, Uno Club or whatever, stuff like that. So you can do whatever you want or start it if we don't have it. But when it comes to right now, we don't necessarily have a set plan because, everything is still kind of just touch and go. Where the students and the school have been working together to try to keep those helping the students get those relationships, because obviously we're not probably going to be able to have student org fairs that you usually have at the beginning of the school year. So being able to reach out to the students so they know, like, hey, this is how you get in contact with them. And they'll probably do like a lot of Zoom things if it's something that's bigger. But yeah, it all kind of just depends on where things end up in the next couple of weeks or so. But they plan to still do things. We have social media as well. I have faith in the schools and the students that they will figure it out and we'll make it work. It just may unfortunately not be like what we're used to. Dorms are also not mandatory for freshmen. We do guarantee housing for freshmen if you apply by a certain date, but obviously right now, not necessarily the biggest thing right now. So students are coming on campus if they want to, but they don't have to this year. So I know like the dorms and stuff, that's like a big thing and like it's a very memorable time in your life. I know it was for me. It was so much fun, but your health and safety is also important, and we're doing our best to like still give you all that experience. And it may be different, but it's still going to be good.
Taylor?
So similar to Deanna, we actually don't have a life on campus requirement. So some of our freshmen commute. About 90% of our freshman class does normally choose to live on campus. This year, it's going to be a little different. But this year, our Res Life has announced that all of our students who are living in residence halls will be living in singles. So that's going to be a little different. Normally, you would have at least one roommate and a communal bathroom down the hall and things like that. Our dorms are, they vary by building. So some are, for strictly girls, some are for strictly boys. We have, LGBTQI housing, things like that. We have a bunch of different options for living learning communities, things like that. We also have a language house where when students are studying a language, they would speak that language while they're at home, so to speak. So it's definitely kind of an immersion experience on campus. In terms of student life, we have over 800 clubs, so definitely a bunch to choose from as well. Everything from a pre-professional club or a sports club. My personal favorite when I was a student was probably student entertainment events, which brought comedians like Jim Gaffigan and Kevin Hart to campus for discounted tickets. They also would show new movies in our movie theater on campus, things like that. But there's really something for everyone. We do have a Quidditch team, which that was really interesting to see when I was a student, to see a kid on a bike with a broom. I was like, all right, but okay. And then everything from squirrel watching club, which you're going to find at almost every college you talk to, people are going to say their squirrels are different. And it's because for some reason at college, the squirrels are different. So you're definitely going to see a bunch of different things when you go to research clubs and things like that. It's definitely a fun time. I'd say this year, yeah, it's going to be different. It's still going to be good. We're still going to get our students involved. Our first look fair takes place every fall, and then we have another one called Stamp Fest in the spring, where all of our clubs and organizations come out, so that way students can kind of walk around our McKeldin Mall and go up to the different clubs and talk to them. This year it is going to be virtual for the fall, just to make sure we have that distancing and safety in mind and things like that. But that way students will still be able to find out about the different offerings we have on campus.
I would definitely say clubs are a great way to meet people and make friends that aren't, taking your classes or maybe aren't, doing all the same things or in your dorm. It's a great way to kind of reach outside of those boundaries that you sometimes find yourself in. I'd like to take just a minute to remind the attendees that if they have any questions, please put them in the Q&A. We do have the option to go for an extra half an hour, but only if I get more questions. So that is up to you all. And same thing goes for the YouTube channel. Let's see. What are some of the main problems that make first years unsuccessful in college? Or, translating that, how can a new student be successful in college? Let's go back to Taylor.
Time management. Time management is such a huge factor when you are going to be experiencing this huge change, especially if you go from, living at home with your parents to living in a dorm, eating in, the cafeterias or the dining halls and things like that. All of a sudden you need to make your own schedule. So yes, you will have a class schedule and things like that, but you also have to figure out, okay, when am I going to study? When am I going to go eat? What time am I waking up to ensure that I have enough time to personally get ready? Because it varies person to person. I mean, my best friend in college could roll out of bed and be at her, class at 8 a.m. perfectly fine. With me, I had to wake up 2 hours early to make sure, okay, I have breakfast, I've done this, I've done everything. So it's really learning what works best for you. Also, organization-wise, in high school, I remember all my teachers kind of set how they wanted things turned in, things like that. So they'd be like, you have to have this notebook for this class and organize it this way. Versus in college, as long as your assignments are turned in, your professors aren't going to worry about how you're organizing your notebook or your binder or things like that. If a planner works best for you, get a planner. If Google Calendar reminders work best for you, use Google Calendars. You have to find out what works for you to keep you on top of things and organized, while also making sure you're taking care of yourself as well.
Let's go to Deanna.
I would definitely say balance, which is like time management, like set time aside. So things now may be a little different, but am I going to go out to this event that this organization is having, or am I going to go hang out at my friend's house and go to the movies, or am I going to go study? Like, you have to like have that balance. Yes, college is that first time, away, and you get to have fun, but you're there to get an education. Do not waste that. So I would definitely say that's important. A lot of students struggle with that their first semester because there's not anyone on you like that. I will also say closed mouths don't get fed. If you are lost, if you need help, you have to speak up. Your teacher's not there to say, did you get it? Are you sure? Like there's not doing that, especially now that things are virtual. So don't be afraid to speak up. And if you are, this is the perfect excuse now with everything going on to email your teacher, say, these are the questions I had. I didn't have enough time during class. Like, don't be the students who's lost and they stay lost because they never said anything. Because your grade is going to be your grade 9 times out of 10. So I would definitely say speak up and like have time management. So, yeah.
Carla?
Yeah, I was going to say mine was not asking for help. So, similar to I think Deanna's last point there, there are plenty of resources, in college where folks want students to succeed, but, they're not going to know that a student is struggling unless a student reaches out, right? So that the first step could be reaching out to your professor to see if there's anything that can be done to clear up confusion if you may have it. Guarantee that you're probably not the only person that's struggling with the concept or with getting, with managing time and with doing everything that comes with being in a new environment, with learning, a different structure to things. But there's also resources outside, of the classroom that are set up. I know at Carolina we have a writing center, we have, a study center, we have a math tutoring center, and they also, different departments can offer different tutoring opportunities. So if you feel like you're struggling in some way, shape, or form, don't be scared to reach out. Don't think that you're failing because you're asking for help, because a lot of times that could be the difference between succeeding or not. And these resources are available to students, for students to take advantage of. And the only way someone's going to know to step in is if you go in there and kind of ask for the resources that you need and take advantage of that while you're there.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with all of you. Speaking as a teacher and as a student, I can't tell you how much it helps when students ask questions, or when they are emailing me after class and telling me, I had no idea what you were talking about today. Like, we shape our lesson. We are not planning our lessons the first week of school. Like, we're going to shape them on what we think is happening in class. We need to get your feedback, especially in this virtual environment where they might not see your face as much or be able to get that same feedback they get in a classroom. So we have reached our hour, I believe, right? We didn't go too long. Okay, sorry, it's only 5 o'clock. But we do have one more question in our chat. We are asking, do colleges look favorably on individuals who graduate early, considering that all the core requirements are fulfilled? So let's start with Deanna, maybe.
I wouldn't say that we necessarily favor those students, because in Minnesota we have the PSEO program. So like, a lot of students finish their core classes early, or at least half to majority of them. So I don't feel that we necessarily give special treatment or anything, because we're still looking at those grades. So if you did you finished your core classes early, but you still got C's, that still shows us you may not be completely ready for college. So it's, that you took those classes, but also how well did you do in those classes? So yeah, I wouldn't say it necessarily guarantees that you will get special treatment, because a lot of people even have their associates. They will full graduation, all of that. So we will take it into consideration, but I don't necessarily see you getting like special treatment, like, oh, she gets in or he gets in.
Taylor.
I'd say it's similar. We do review, holistically, so we will take it into account, but I would also say keep in mind that admission, there is a limited number of spots most of the time that a college can admit for their freshman class. And if taking into account extracurriculars and things like that, sometimes that extra year provides you more time for either test prep if they require, standardized testing or things like that, as well as you have more of a time to kind of learn about yourself and learn what you're interested in, whether that be major-wise, whether that be extracurricular-wise, things like that. Also, like Deanna said, you want to make sure that you're succeeding in those classes. So you don't necessarily just want to complete the requirements. You want to make sure that you're succeeding and doing all that you absolutely can do to not only graduate high school, but enjoy that experience. I think a lot of our students experience this stress of, okay, I have to check this box, I have to check this box, and things like that. And I think it's really important to take care of yourself. So not just push yourself to graduate early for the sake of graduating early, but kind of enjoy that time in high school.
And Carla?
Yeah, I would say at Carolina, like I don't think it's a factor one way or another. It's not something that, will give someone an edge up, but it's also not something that will directly negatively impact you. Just because it'll just be a factor out of many that we're considering. It'll just be another part of the application. And I think it's going to vary so much from student to student, and just the context behind why they're graduating early. If you're graduating early, just, and then, but it shows that you still had room to take on more at your high school, that could be very different than if you're graduating early because you need to go out and work or something along those lines. So it's going to vary. And, those are just two examples that I can think of, but there's plenty more in between. So I think it largely depends on the context, and it's difficult to say, with just that one factor, whether it's going to make a difference one way or another. But I would say the more you can provide us, in your application for your reasoning behind, doing everything that you're doing, not just that, I think that the better that it can make your application.
Did I hit everyone? Right. Okay. It looks like we have a couple more questions. So given a choice of taking an AP class or maybe taking some other upper level class where you might do not as well, right, getting a C or something, or taking a standard level class at an A, what would be better? What would be a better choice, I guess? And let's start with Taylor.
I'd say it's a personal gauge. You have to know at what level you will be challenging yourself, but you're still going to be succeeding. I'd say we do like to see students challenge themselves, but there's a balance to it, just like there's going to be a balance you have to equate when you get to college. So it's okay to, get a C in a class. It's not going to make or break your application or anything like that if you, don't perform as well as you normally do in a class. Sometimes it's just a challenging class. But I think you really need to think about your course selection and know, okay, I struggle in math. Maybe I should not take AP math. That's a personal one. I know I'm talking to Girls Talk Math, so it's probably not math for you guys, but just saying, think about what you perform best in and what's going to really challenge you, but also balance that schedule out.
Carla?
Yeah, no, I would agree completely. I think it depends on the student, and one bad grade here or there isn't going to make or break an application, generally speaking. But yeah, we do want students to challenge themselves, to take some of those rigorous courses, but to also, still enjoy school, to enjoy learning. And if, as Taylor said, if getting a C in an AP class is going to stress you out so much that, you're not going to enjoy school, or that may, play a larger factor down the road, then maybe for you that might not be the right case. Because in the same way that one bad grade isn't going to make or break your application, one less AP class also isn't going to make or break your application. As long as you're balancing yourself, you're challenging yourself kind of in different ways, and you have other parts of the application that you can add on to it. I think that one case is more of a personal choice, and we'll take it into consideration as a whole.
And finally, Deanna.
So I agree completely with what Taylor and Carla said. I'll also say it depends on what class you're taking and also what you plan to do in college. Like, don't take AP history and you're going to get a C or minus, and then so now you have the C minus and you had nothing that you want to do and you're a math major. So now you have this lower grade on your report card that didn't have to, it has nothing to do with what you're doing. I would definitely say at the University of Minnesota, it kind of depends on what your goal is. So when we have students who want to get into our engineering program because it is a very rigorous program, or neuroscience, things like that, we would expect to see, if you took it, we would expect to see those AP classes and stuff. And even if you did well or not, that helps us see when you took the initiative, but also where you are in that. But yeah, I would definitely say be strategic. I know it sucks that so early in your life you have to be strategic to set up everything, but ask yourself, am I doing this for fun, or am I doing this for a specific reason to stand out? Will this negatively affect my other grades because I'll be putting so much time into this? Take all of that into consideration, because it really make sure that it makes sense, if that makes sense. So I don't think it hurts either way, except it just depends on what your goal is out of that.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I've had a bad AP experience that made me not want to take math in college. Still ended up a math major, but I've also had good AP experiences that, have shaped what I've done. I would also go off of what Deanna was saying. And if you're thinking about taking the AP test and you want to get credit for it, pay attention to the schools you're trying to go to and what their levels are, because it's not always you need a 5 or you need a 4. Sometimes they'll take a 3 and give you credit, depending if it's one of the harder AP courses, especially. So pay attention to that as well when you're making your decision.
Yeah, we definitely do that. Some scores need 3, some 4, some 5. It's all on the website, but definitely, yeah, look into that.
Yeah. Okay. It looks like we have one final question. Kind of has to do with testing again. Is there a better test versus SAT or ACT? Is one better than the other? Let's start with Carla.
Yeah, in terms of, which test to submit, for us, we don't have a preference for one or the other. It's largely depending on the student. Some students test better when it comes to the SAT, some test better when it comes to the ACT. So we don't have a preference. We leave that up to the student. You can send us both. We'll take, the equivalent of whichever one is higher, and we'll consider that. If you've taken both tests, we'll also super score at Carolina. So if you've taken either test multiple times, we'll take the individual score from each section to give you an overall higher score if based off the different components of it. So it's entirely up to the student. We don't have a preference. We generally will require just one test. This year, obviously, it's a little bit different, but yeah.
Deanna?
We don't have a preference either way. I would definitely say do whichever one you're most comfortable with, or whichever one also you may have access to. Like, let's just be frank and honest, the test can be a lot, not only financially, but mentally, emotionally. So do what you think is best. In my opinion, if your school offers both of them, especially if they're for free, take advantage of that if you can. Yeah, so because if you take both, you may do one better in one than the other, and that could be the difference on the amount of scholarships that you receive. So yeah, I would definitely say just do what's best for you. The SAT and ACT schools, I'm sure pretty much every school accepts both because different parts of the country take either or. So yeah.
As a follow-up to that real quick, Deanna, could you explain maybe the difference between the SAT and ACT? Or if you don't want to, we can have someone else. You were the last. Taylor, if you want to do it.
I was going to say, Taylor, I've never taken the SAT, so not sure how
So the SAT and ACT, they're both standardized tests. The difference, I'd say the main difference that we see is it kind of depends on how your brain works, which one you're going to perform better on. There are actually free exams to kind of determine which one you're likely to perform better on. So definitely check into those resources and things like that as well. The ACT has more sections into it. So it has like a science section and things like that versus the SAT is you have your reading section, your writing section, and your mathematics section. And a lot of students think, and most of our parents, when I'm helping students through the application process, most of them remember the SAT rather than the ACT. But again, it's all up to the individual student and things like that. They're both just different standardized tests. So it's really going to vary depending on how your brain works and things like that. Definitely take advantage of if your school offers a test prep course or anything like that, because with standardized exams, there's a specific way of thinking in order to take a standardized test. It's not like, you study and you sit down for your mathematics exam. It's a little bit different in regards to a standardized test and things like that, because with the SAT, if you answer a question wrong, it subtracts points, where if you leave it blank, it doesn't. So you have to keep in mind all of that when you're taking the test as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you mentioned, but one is also, is an ACT shorter, like an hour or two, or the SAT is like 3 hours, I think, or something like that?
I can't remember the exact length of both of them because honestly, it's been a while since I took either one.
I never took the ACT, so I'm not positive, but I feel like
yeah, so there is also a difference in regards to the timing and things like that. From what I remember, both of them do have built-in breaks simply because it is a longer test you're going to be sitting for. So
they're both around the same time. They restructured that. I used to work as a college advisor before coming and doing this. So I used to proctor both exams for high school students. They recently changed the SAT a couple of years ago, and that I think they made it a little bit more similar to the ACT, but it's still, the components are still very different. It's just the structure of it is a little bit more similar to the ACT now.
Okay, cool. It looks like we have one more question, and I'm just going to have Carla answer it because it's more to do with North Carolina. But if individuals go to like special schools such as NCSSM, which is a science and math focused school, or I guess there's also like magnet schools or early colleges type thing. But do they have a higher chance of getting admitted into the associated college?
Not necessarily. So we don't have like a quota or anything like that when it comes to different high schools where we have to take a certain number of students from each schools. I think for NCSSM specifically, you know, you usually have to apply to get into NCSSM. So those students are typically highly motivated. They're typically already taking some of those rigorous courses. They typically have all of those components that we're looking for from all of our applicants. And then the majority of our applicants, I think, from year to year from North Carolina come from some of those, you know, specialized schools such as NCSSM. So it may seem, you know, like we're giving priority, but really the breakdown is just we're looking at the application as a whole. We're looking at everything that you can provide. It just typically it's the resources that you're set up with, and you know everything else that comes into play that can, you know, make the college application process, you know, a little bit seamless for you, which can make you stand out as a whole. But typically it's because you had to go through that application process initially on the other end, which just sets you up on a little bit of a better path when it comes to then applying to college.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'd like to thank our panelists today, Deanna Loggins, Carla Salas, and Taylor Duvall, for joining us and sharing their expertise. I'm sure campers, if you have any more follow-up questions, we can give you their email, or you can just reach out to their admissions office as well. Thank you to everyone else for tuning in today. This is our last event of the summer, so I'd also want to say congratulations to our campers, and we hope we see all of you next year, unless, you know, you're going off to college, then no, we won't see you, but hope to hear from you next year at least. So thank you, everyone.